My loud voice. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. And they started this morning with standing room only in Rochester, and here we are standing room only in Fergus Falls at 6 o'clock tonight. So I think this one Minnesota thing is catching on, right? It's been an honor for me to get to know Governor-elect Tim Walz, and having been appointed to the advisory committee, the transition advisory committee that has Republicans, that has independents, and has Democrats on it. You know, as you get to know Tim, this one Minnesota is not something it's not a campaign slogan. It's who he is, and it's who we are as Minnesota when we're at our best. When we look at the policies that we've made as a state that has the rest of the country look to us as a model, whether it's education, saying that every child deserves a quality education regardless of the property wealth of the district they live in, or the Minnesota Miracle back in the 70s that said that every community, regardless of the size, is going to be a livable place to raise a family and start a business. That's who we are. That's who we are as a state. Come on in, guys. And there's seats up here.
You can fill in up here.
All these seats here belong to you guys, by the way. You guys paid for it. Sit in them, all right?
Yeah, thank you so much.
They keep coming.
Thanks for coming.
Alright, well, I'll say this, Fergus Falls shows up. I've always told Governor Walz that Fergus Falls shows up. I think we showed tonight. And the good news is the fire marshal got done at 6 o'clock. Hey, help me welcome the next governor of the state of Minnesota, Mr. Tim.
Mayor, I know we've got some other elected officials. We'll get an opportunity to point those folks out. To all of you, thank you. Minnesota, once again, was first in the nation in voter turnout. That speaks volumes to civic participation. And at 6 o'clock, and yes, the school teacher in me had to start right at 6 o'clock, and you're here. And you're here because you love this state, and you're here because of we're making the plea to you, and I'm going to ask you, help us make the right decisions in both forming your government and how we make the decisions that impact our state. Because I think all of us recognize in our nation's history right now, the capacity for us to find common ground. And when I talk about one Minnesota, that doesn't mean we're all the same. That doesn't mean that we expect everybody to be homogenous. What it means is that we have common values and find the capacity to work across differences, whether they be political, geographic, economic, to find solutions that work for the best of the state. Those are the types of reasons why we're here. This is what civic engagement looks like, and for that I am incredibly grateful. We did this One Minnesota listening tour. We started out yesterday. We're deliberate in how we did it. We want to get all corners of the state. I have to say, I kind of did a homer job to start out. We started in Mankato, a few blocks from my house. So, but we were in Laverne yesterday afternoon. We were in Marshall. We were in Granite Falls. We were last night in La Crescent down in the southeast corner and in Winona. Then we were in Rochester, and we just came from North Minneapolis to standing room only. The incredible civic engagement, the incredible diversity of economic and racially across this state will warm your hearts. And those folks, just like you, expect, and the privilege and the honor that I've been given to become the next and the 41st governor of Minnesota comes with the incredible responsibility to make sure your voices are heard and make sure that we are accountable and responsible to you. And so what we're doing at this point in time, and we're doing things differently. My Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan is off in Shakopee. We'll be going to different corners of the state, meeting back up in Grand Portage and Duluth on Sunday night to make sure all those voices are being heard as a starting point. And it's important that we do it now because this is a critical place in forming and having the opportunity to re-look at how we do governance in Minnesota. Here's something that when this got announced on election night, it seemed odd at first and then maybe kind of like, yeah, that's where we're at in this country. This is the only state with divided government of the 50 states, meaning where one house is Democrat and one house is Republican. The other ones have all polarized. They're either all Democrat or they're all Republican. That's how it's happening. I view that as an incredible opportunity for us to find lasting compromises that extend beyond this administration. You know how this works. One side sweeps in, they do everything they want to do, and then people get excited, you're mad about it or whatever, and it sweeps back the other side, and then we repeal the things that they did. And citizens are left saying, what are you going to do about my rising premiums on health care? What are you going to do about roads? What are you going to do about rising taxes and I'm not feeling like I'm getting a return on the dollar? Those are things that we can find. And I'm not talking about government on autopilot. I'm talking about making sure that the people have the say in what happens. So I'm here tonight to listen. I'm going to sit down here in about 45 seconds. I'm going to try, or I'm going to stand up. I've got a notebook around here somewhere. I don't know where Kayla went, if she can get in. I'm going to take that notebook, and I'm going to do what we've been doing across this state and listening to neighbors. And the questions I want you to think about or answer is, as you're sitting here, what do you want to see in the people that we collectively, and we're doing this differently. We created this advisory board. It's never been done. We've got about 30 leaders across this state, like your mayor. We have, as we said, former Republican Senator Durenberger. We have Fortune 500 or Fortune 50 CEOs. We have faith leaders. We have small business owners. We have teachers. We have a diversity that makes up this great state of Minnesota on this advisory board. And then we have hiring panels that are taking input from people that will hire the commissioners in each of the agencies. Now, what I would ask you to think about is, and I've given them the direction from me, is that I understand I'm asking something. It's kind of the John Kennedy ask of all of you. Please be willing to serve your state. Please be willing to think about it if you put your name in. Please be willing to serve on some of these boards and commissions that provide oversight so that you have ownership, and more importantly, we get a wide variety of ideas to help make good decisions for the state. So what's happening at this stage right now, those commissioner positions are open until December 7th, and this listening tour is meant to entice you to tell us, what do you want to see in those agencies? Some of you have worked with them and said, oh, I'd like them to return my dang phone call when I call them, whatever it might be, something as simple as that. Or I'd like them to not see themselves necessarily just as regulatory agencies, but to see them as partners in growing this, whether it's commerce or education or agriculture or human services. And we have the capacity, when I say we, us as a people, have the capacity to reform that however we can. As society changes and as the world changes, those of you who interface with the Department of Human Services, Health and Human Services, my goodness, lots of things fall under that. I don't know how one person can get that as a commissioner, because it can't be one person. It needs to be the input from the people who are impacted by those commissions, and those commissioners need to be there to help us get that right. So I'm going to leave it wide open to wherever you want to go and some of the things that you're concerned about. But I can tell you what we're doing right now, day 23, and I'm here to make sure, and I think the foundation of democracy is open public meetings with a free press there to tell how the story went. That's foundational to us. We're doing it this way because you're going to know. If we take suggestions from you and we ignore it all, we're not listening to you. We're not responsible to you. But what I want you to do is, and somebody already got on me on the 10th day, they said, well, their commissioner picks are looking like they're not going the right direction. And I responded to this person. I said, how about you let us get the job officially first and then fail and then criticize it? Because I am sure I will disappoint you at times. But it can't be a disappointment that's not based on trying to find the best answers together, by trying to have that feedback. So this time of an administration, and this doesn't happen that often. We've had 3 governors in the last 24 years, whatever. This doesn't happen that often, that we get a chance to step back, start fresh again, and make sure that you're being heard at this critical stage. Now, I do want to say, once we start to pick, nothing stops us from continuing to evolve. I think one of the things that I would just leave you with as you start thinking and give me feedback on agencies or things that you're concerned about or things you'd like to see in your government, whatever's on your mind, is I think we can do a better job of streamlining and collaborating amongst agencies and governments to be more responsive to stakeholders. Because what I oftentimes hear is that I'm fine working with the agencies. I just need them to move at the speed of business, or I need them to have an answer in a more timely manner that lets me have some predictability. And all of us together get to decide how that's going to look. So thank you for having me here. I think I've got my notebook and a pen that I'm going to start writing. There it is. I'm going to start writing on this, and I would just leave it open to you, but encourage you to think about the space we're in, the decisions that I'm going to have to make as this committee, and your suggestions are going to be taken by those committees, what those commissioners and those agencies of government should look like, and what's the most important part of that. So thanks for having me. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, just glad for you to be here. And what I've seen is I'm a veteran and a business owner, also a member of the education community with a master's in education. You as an educator have seen that sometimes organizations don't move quickly. And how do you see in a burst workforce educational system, you being able to make some difference, or how can we assist you in making those differences that we need to make the educational system more nimble, creating not only jobs through entrepreneurship and business, but also able to create sustainability and like enjoyment in life. I mean, we have a great community, but if you're not enjoying life because you don't have a job to go to, it's a helpful job. So I was just wondering, that's what I was.
That's good, and I would say if you want me to answer a question, please ask. If you want to just make a statement so we can keep moving on, I'll do that too. So I'll answer in this regard. Education is foundational. I've made this clear. If I'm going to be judged on what this administration looks like, I want Minnesota to have the best education system in the country. Now, I stand on the shoulders of giants where we've started, but we all know we do a very good job in some areas, not so good in others. We have a changing world. We have to see education. And I appreciate what you said at the end there about this idea of quality of life. I also want to be measured by how happy people are who live in a state. And that is not just a feel-good kumbaya thing. I don't know about many of you, but I would like government to function in a manner where I could go home some nights and not worry that my hair's on fire or the country has all this crisis or something that's going on. And we could function in a manner that is much more deliberate, that is much more the drama being ratcheted down to give people that capacity. Because when it comes down to it, what we do collectively together is try and deliver services that we can't do alone. We can't build highways by ourselves. We're trying to educate a broader population. We can't do research sometimes by our own, but there are many things you're perfectly capable of doing your own, and you don't need the governor to tell you how to do it or to be involved in those things. We need to structure that that's right. When it comes to education, I think we need to have this conversation about what does lifelong learning look like? What are we getting for the bang for our buck? And again, this is where that interface with the business community is. If we don't have good jobs in our communities, people don't get that very basic freedom and fundamental choice to choose to live in a place where they want to raise their children. And I think sometimes in the midst of all this, it's good to hear us start with that. We step back. By all measures of life expectancy, crime rates, the way people view their personal well-being, Minnesota ranks as high as any place on the planet, not just in this country. And I think we have the capacity to even add to that. So when it comes to education, I think it's getting input from all the stakeholders. I think it is being flexible, as you said, and more nimble. Our technical colleges are way ahead of this. And I think, I've got a 12-year-old. If he comes home and tells me that he wants to be an electrician, it'll be the happiest day of my life, because I know he will have a noble trade that will give him a skill set that he can earn a living and do what he is best suited for. And I've done this as being a high school teacher sometimes. We have a one track on people that we say every one of these students is going to go to a 4-year degree, and some should. We need all of us in here. We need entrepreneurs, we need doctors, we need teachers, we need nurses, we need electricians, we need everybody, but being thoughtful about it, how we do it. And I think be willing, and again, you're going to hear me say this often, I am a firm believer that the closer decisions are made to where people live, That's why I trust the mayors, and you'll find me around with mayors and county commissioners very often, because I think putting your tax dollars closer to home works for several reasons. One is, they know better about what the issues of Fergus Falls are, just like the people in the Crescent know what the Crescent leads, and just like what I heard in North Minneapolis. The people in North Minneapolis said, you don't need to do anything for us, you need to do things with us, is a partnership in that. And so, and the other reason I like local control is that it usually gets done because you know where he lives. And that's, you go there. And as the governor gets to roll in and there's no accountability, I've seen this on a federal level, I've worked with some amazing people in the United States Congress. I've also worked with people on both sides of the aisle that I am convinced haven't done a damn thing in a decade, and there's no accountability for it because you don't have to deliver, you don't have to patch the roads, you don't have to educate the kids. So I think giving that local control, supporting it, and I want to be very clear when it comes to education. Minnesota separates itself, and the Minnesota Miracle was predicated on an equitable education across the state. Over the past basically 20 years, we've started to shift the burden away from this equitable education that's in our Constitution and moved it towards a property tax base, which has put our greater Minnesota schools at risk because we don't have as large a property tax base. And I heard our grandmother in the Crescent last night say, how are you going to fix it? My kids who are going to school in Woodbury have more opportunities and more things in their schools and better schools than we have in La Crescent, and we care just as much about ours. That's a system that Minnesota had fixed in the early 70s, and it grew the best workforce that's able to be a feeder to your businesses. So I would say making sure we have equitable education funding, local control, that we're using best practices, and we start to see education as a lifelong endeavor. So, and again, if you have a question, I'll answer, otherwise I'll just go, yes, ma'am. Yeah, a couple in the back, yeah. Yeah, go both of you.
Just a comment, please. We know you're in lakes country. We have more lakes in this county than any other. We have a good set of leaders in our county, but when you pick a commissioner of the DNR, I suggest or respectfully suggest that you start fresh. And there's just so many issues in that area, and I think a new person needs to come in and just start out fresh and be really science-based. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Is that the skill set, you think? You think
Yes.
the science-based decision-making?
That's it.
Which I agree with. My guidance to those commissioner hiring staff, first and foremost, the high-level thing that I want to see in those people is that they are servant leaders responsible to the people, and then start plugging in their basic knowledge on things. So, thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
As a welfare recipient 25 years ago when I needed help getting back on my feet, I was tasked with having to justify everything I did. They came and checked my house to make sure that I wasn't living frivolous, more than I should have. I had to turn in information about my earnings, and I had to justify the fact that I needed it. Nowadays, that's not the case. I know people very well that use the system. One specifically chooses not to work full-time so she can rake in money, and she's raking it. She shows me, she tells me. How are you gonna fix that? Because that's my tax dollars.
Yeah.
I appreciated the help when I needed it, but there's people that don't need it. They're choosing to work the system, and we do not have the accountability anymore. How are we gonna fix that? Because it seems like Dayton didn't care.
Yeah. Well, I care for several reasons, because these programs, like you said, are critically important, and I think a compassionate nation, anytime we do a budget is both a fiscal document and a moral document of the reflection of our values. And when I'm asking you, or any of these elected officials are asking you for your tax dollars to make improvements to things that we need to do together, there's a sacred responsibility to provide oversight of that. I have been a stickler in Congress. Strange bedfellows sometimes. Ron Paul and I felt like we were tilting at windmills when two things I asked for. I wanted the Federal Reserve audited, and I wanted the Pentagon audited. And I say that as a 24-year veteran, and I'm very hawkish on national defense, but I think they're wasting a hell of a lot of money over there that is weakening our national defense. On this system of a safety net, my pledge to you is that I do believe that there's a role for a hand up for people to be able to get them off the ground. I do believe there's some capacity, and I do believe a lot of these programs deliver incredible service to the exact people we want. When there are abuses on that, we must be aggressive of making sure it doesn't happen. We must be making sure we're reporting it. and we must make sure that we have safeguards in place all the time to do that, because again, the way I view that, that's not just wasted taxpayer dollars, that's dollars that could have gone to lift someone up who could do just like yourself, because the purpose of this is when a person needs to hand up my family to Social Security survivor benefits. My dad died when I was young, my brother was 8, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. That lifted us up, we paid it back over time, you paid it back over time, so will people going forward. So you have my pledge to make sure that there's an accountability
I wanna know
and
how.
a transparency. I think it starts with the leadership and the audits that go into that. It starts with making sure there's a transparent method. It's making you sure to show you the numbers of where this is happening and to say, no, we're getting this. The example of this, I tell all of you, in the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Program, used to be called food stamps, that has a fraud rate of about 2.7%. That's too much, but when you ask people, they wouldn't believe me on that. They think it's rampant. It's not. It's very well managed. But what I say is it's a zero-sum proposition, because if 2.7% of the people are misusing those dollars, we need to get it right. Because I think what ends up happening, and this is what I fear most is that you start to lose your faith in the system delivers it all, and that's when people start to pull back. And I simply find it unacceptable that the richest nation on the planet that produces the most food has people going to bed hungry or living in poverty. And I recognize this, that there are numerous reasons that cause that, but any willingness on our part to turn a blind eye to fraud in the system weakens the entire system. So I think it starts with leadership. I'm a big believer, and again, I will ask you to hold me accountable. I think you set a tone in an organization, and the tone follows down, and then you have safeguards in there. You need to verify what you expect.
The problem with the food stamps is when they can buy food that's better and nicer than I can afford, and I'm working for my money, the whole plan has to go and be reviewed.
Yeah, and I would ask you to open it a little bit, but there's a lot of
Buy all
folks
this
who...
nice food on food stamps, that's ridiculous. I mean,
Well,
you can go to Schwann's,
and I would-
use your EBT card, seriously?
You can also go to the farmer's market, which we should do, because it's a thing is. And I gotta be honest with you, if I've got a child, and the vast majority of these folks are over age 65, and the vast majority of folks using supplemental nutrition programs are under the age of 9, I gotta be honest with you, I'm okay with a kid eating food once in a while rather than just generics, because there has to be something that we need to get that right. I hear you on this, but I think we have to bring it back. And I appreciate you bringing this one into the space, because we've got a lot of these issues that we allow to divide us when there's legitimate points on both sides. I would take a next step further. I want to get to the rest of the question, but if it comes up in here, immigration is the same way. When people ask and want to make sure that we're verifying who's coming to this country and who's safe or whatever, that does not make them racist or un-American. It makes them concerned about the system. But also, we can't do this thing where we demonize our neighbors and try and tell you that this nation isn't stronger because we have immigrants like all of us. I said you know, the Lieutenant Governor-elect, when we talk about immigration, she always says, I have a few things to say about that. She's Native American. So I hear you on that.
So that everybody can hear, we're
That
gonna
works.
pass this mic around, and then if you can stand and talk
That's
to this one,
perfect.
that'd be great.
Yeah, good
Okay,
work.
so I'll
Thank
walk around with you.
Yeah, Bill Schultz, Fergus, Walz. I have a concern. I read in the newspaper that you want to legalize marijuana, and my concern is it's put in a way that we might get another $40 or $50 million tax revenue every year that way. But I think there's a higher cost that offsets the potential gain in taxes, and that is the wreckage of human life that goes along with legalizing marijuana. I know, in fact, just Colorado is one example. 2 years ago, they legalized marijuana, and I read a National Traffic Safety Board analysis that said in those 2 years, traffic accidents that have caused serious injuries or fatalities have gone up something like 36% in Colorado. And in addition, the number of people who were under the influence of marijuana who caused a serious or fatal accident or killed themselves has gone up by 27%. I cannot see where we can justify getting a few more bucks in taxes for that. I'm going to quote one of my favorite authors who wrote, "In any compromise between food and poison, only death will win. And any compromise between between good and evil, only evil will profit. And I think it's evil to legalize marijuana.
Well, I think we had this discussion in the 30s on alcohol, just to be clear. Because I'm certainly a teacher. I don't drink myself, I don't smoke, I don't gamble. That's not to say I'm superior. It means that I think we have to have a discussion because I mean, I have to be honest with you. Right now, people are smoking marijuana in Minnesota. They are doing that. And that doesn't give it a reason. What I have said is,
They're
I
also
think
robbing stores. Should we
No.
just discuss whether that's okay?
Well, here's what I do. I trust adults to make decisions in their own lives. I have to tell you that I think the government making every decision for you gets to be a path that I'm not quite certain I want to go on either because some of these freedoms. So let me finish on this. That I'm not advocating and I don't make light of the societal implications of whether it be opioid abuse, whether it be alcohol abuse, whether it be gambling abuse, whatever it may be. What I'm saying is we put an incredible amount of resources into a war against marijuana that is not winning. We are spending massive amounts of money and we're not winning. And we are not having the resources to do the education, just like with alcohol. Alcohol is legal, but you better pay a heavy price if you're buying it for a minor or you're driving drunk. And so what I have said is, and there's statistics coming out, and it's early in Colorado, the number is $200 million. They put $110 million back into education. They put $25 million back into substance abuse counseling that has reduced their usage of painkillers and opioids in Colorado. And so I'm not saying it's without that. I have said I think as a state, we need to have an honest discussion about where we go with this. We need to make sure that we're targeting resources where they need to be. And if someone is 21 years old and the only way you can get it is through legal, regulated Minnesota selling places, we have a better idea where it's at. Now, is there going to be a black market? Yeah, I suppose people are still black marketing cigarettes, black marketing alcohol, but you have more of a control over the substance. You have a better idea of where things are at. And again, I come back to this. This is a substance that people use, much like alcohol. I've always said this, I don't think it's my job to give you a sermon. I do think it's my job to try and live one myself, the best of my ability. But to ask an adult to have the state of Minnesota tell them this when we already know it's being used. So I just have brought this up. It got asked of me. Trust me on this. This is not my policy platform. It's education, it's healthcare, it's transportation. But when asked about this, I'm going to be honest with you. I think there is a better solution on this that might involve legalization of recreational marijuana in the ability to have regulation, education, and taxation. And I think there is, and I respect the honest difference in this, but I'm just telling you right now, it's out there, they're using it, they're driving it, using it, our children are able to get it. I hate to say this, but my kids would tell me that. They can get it on any night down there. That has to stop. That's causing problems. No, we take a different approach to it. And the different approach is to regulate it in a smart manner using law enforcement to go in and I don't disagree with you, the harm that can be caused just like any of these things, and I worry about that. I do worry about that. I think it's about teaching our children, keeping it out of the hands until they're an age to make a decision and then have them do that. So, yes.
I have a comment. I don't think anybody in this room doesn't have a family member, a friend, a loved one that hasn't dealt with an addiction problem.
Yeah.
And isn't it time that we evolve to the point where we looked at that as a health issue rather than a criminal issue?
Yes.
I think it's just time.
Yes. And it's a serious health issue. That does not undermine. It is a serious health issue. So I don't make light of that. So yes.
This comment probably is going to play into several people's concerns. Call me naive, but I think that some of the chaos we're experiencing in our society across the nation, globally, is we have completely gotten away from the rule of law. And if we were to start paying attention, the woman who had a concern about welfare abuse, if we paid attention to the rule of law and actually did something about it, not only would it help to correct, but it would help to prevent some of these problems and abuses. The same with
what's been happening in Colorado. Personally, years ago, many, many years ago, when you could still research marijuana, I worked in a psychopharmacology lab. If you think there aren't consequences, you're kidding yourself. Israel has been doing 30 years worth of research on it. I believe in medical marijuana. I think sometimes that's safer than some of the pharmaceutical drugs we have. But to use the argument that, well, alcohol is legal, since when did two wrongs make a right? I don't even want to hear those arguments anymore because it's futile, it's useless, it's shifting blame.
How did the rule of law stop the usage of marijuana as it's continued to go up?
Well, you know what, a friend of mine, John Menard, once, I had been asking him, what kind of locks are the best locks for a home? And he said something that I will never forget. He said, locks are meant to keep honest people honest. Those who want to get into your house are going to get into your house. I think there's a lot of people here who believe in the rule of law, will teach their children the rule of law, and if you don't make murder is illegal too, and we still have people who murder. I mean, so to throw those kinds of
But I don't think that's a fair argument to
I
to
don't
drug
think
or
bringing
murder.
up alcohol is a fair argument either. You know,
Well,
we
they're
know
both
the
drugs that
dangers
people
of that.
use, so
I mean,
think
now
they're-
we're discovering even e-cigarettes. I mean, we legalize things and then we spend money to try to correct the
No,
problem.
well, no, and I appreciate that. This is why citizen engagement on this, just to be clear,